All right, welcome everyone to the Hack the Box trick machine. So starting off at a high level overview in 60 seconds, we're going to be doing some enumeration where we find a website and there's nothing really going on there. So we do some auto recon and some DNS investigation where we dig up some subdomains, and ultimately we find pre-prod marketing.trick.htb. From here we do some SQL injection on the login form, find some user credentials. This allows us to get an initial foothold in the pre-prod marketing.trick.htb web application. From here, we find a directory traversal vulnerability, but we have some troubles and have to use a web application firewall specific bypass for the directory traversal. From here, we find user Michael's SSH key. We log into the target server, do some internal enumeration, learn about a fail to ban service, find some group permissions that actually allow us to, in a sense, modify some files within fail to ban. We learn how fail to ban works and what exactly it's executing within itself, and we're able to modify some of those custom files, input our own code, and execute it to get to root. That's it. Let's get into it. So starting off with the first part of this engagement, this part is all about enumeration and learning that there are some subdomains that you can discover through DNS enumeration tools. However, when I first did this box, I actually ran auto recon because I tried the usual nmap, browsing to the website, enumerating it, and I didn't really find anything while I did that. However, when I added the actual host name to my Etsy host file, which is trick.htb, I reran the auto recon, and the next day I came back and actually found several subdomains in the DNS information here. So I'll just show you here. If I actually do the basic nmap scan, you're going to get I think it's going to be 4 ports that are open, and you'll browse to this web page here where you're not going to find anything. At least I didn't. You can do directory busting like I did. You can try playing around with the email address, fire up Burp Suite, and I just didn't really find anything helpful. Looking at the results from the nmap scan, of course, we have port 22. We have an SMTP service, so I was playing around with that and trying to enumerate that. Then there's 53, which is a port for DNS, and then, of course, port 84, HTTP. So again, the key here was to add trick.htb to your Etsy host file, which we see literally nothing has changed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the auto recon results, not from the initial search with just the IP address, but when we ran it against the actual host name, because that's going to be key, right? If we're enumerating DNS, it's really important that we enumerate it by the host name itself, or it's not going to potentially route our requests to the proper backend object. So jumping into our directory here, we'll take a look at the results. And of course, there are a ton of results. So I'll just show here, if we actually look at the auto recon results for the original IP address and we jump in there, we will see that under the, let me think, I think it was under the DNS information. Yeah, so if we look under the initial scan for what came up for port 53 over TCP, so there was a UDP port here, we will see that, I have to actually browse into it. And you can see here, we'll take a peek at the zone transfer information, and really nothing was found here, right? However, if we actually take a look at the results from the trick search, and we look under scans, TCP, port 53, and the DNS info, which will be the DNS zone transfer by host name. So this one is not by host name, so let me just clarify that we want the host name lookup. Yeah, so you can see here that we have, of course, trick.htb, which in this case, I just assumed because I was kind of hitting a dead wall after a couple days, or sorry, after, I don't know how long, I think it was a day or two. So I just threw trick.htb in my Etsy host file, but then I did get some results. And you can see here, we have this subdomain, which showed up, preprod-payroll.trick.htb. And then over here, we also have root.trick.htb. So let's go ahead and add these to our Etsy host file. So you can see here in my Etsy host file, I have trick.htb, which again, I just kind of guessed. then I did find through auto recon and the DNS zone transfer against trick.htb, not the IP address. We found preprod-payroll.trick.htb, and then we found root.trick.htb. So with these added, let us move forwards in this engagement. Our next step is to just do the obvious, and we're actually going to browse to, you probably guessed it by now, root.trick.htb. And we'll find that the attack surface is the same, like nothing's really changed. So now we're gonna go ahead and try the other one, which was, if I recall, it was preprod-payroll-trick.htb. I think I might be out to lunch here. Yep, it worked, here we go. So now we have something to work with. And we obviously have the username and password prompts. You can try some default credentials there. You can try some SQL payloads as well. And I think that you can actually log in with some basic SQL payloads. I don't recall, but we'll quickly try. But how I did it was with SQL maps. You know what? Let's just do the SQL map because I think it's kind of cool and it's a lot of fun. So the way we're going to do that is with SQL map, one way to automate your testing is to capture a request of the page and the GET request that you're trying to enumerate. And the way we can do that is with Burp Suite. Let me show you. All right, so as you can see here, I have opened up Burp Suite and I'm using the built-in proxied browser, so I don't have to configure it myself. And this is the web page here. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna type admin, hit login, and it's gonna go straight to Burp Suite. So what we'll do is we will go, if I recall, it's gonna be action and save item. And you can see here that we now have the option to simply download and save this file. So let's go ahead and do exactly that. We'll go over to HTB, trick, and we'll call this request. And we'll hit save. There we go. Now what we'll do is we'll fire up the old SQL map. First, we need to get to that file. So we should see it here. There it is. It's a request file. And if we run file on it, it will tell us that it is a XML format. So we'll go ahead and do, if I recall, it's going to be SQL map. And it is the R for request. So we'll type request. That's the name of the file. And we will call, I'm just thinking, I think that's it for now. Let's just try this and see what happens. I think there's a little more to it, but let's see. Okay, so it's already stored some of the information, but if we were to wait and go through the process, because obviously I've already done this machine, you can see here it says it's a MySQL server. So that's great. So knowing this, what we'll do is we'll actually specify and we'll say, hey, we know the database management system is MySQL. So therefore, don't worry about trying to figure out what database management system it is. Instead, take a look, and because this is injectable, right? You can see right here that there's a post parameter saying payload, and this is the payload that was able to pass commands to the backend because it was injectable. So now what we want to say is, hey, tell me what databases are stored on this database management system. So we're going to call the tap-tap-dbs command here, as you can see, and it is going to tell us that there are two databases. We have information schema and payroll database. Well, obviously payroll database is sounding quite juicy. So what we're going to do is we're going to call our command again. So we're going to call SQL map, tac-r for our request, which we saved. And that's of course the file where we tried to log into the website. Then we'll call or specify our database management system as MySQL. And we're going to change this up a bit. Instead of saying, hey, tell me what database systems exist, we're going to change this to say, show me a little more about the specific database, payroll underscore database. And we want to know what tables are in the payroll database. This command here, it's going to go through the process and it's going to say, hey, great news. We have 11 tables found. So you can go through all these tables. It takes time. I automated it to go through every table. And I think it took almost a whole day because it was so slow for some reason. However, in this particular instance, the table that we're going after is the users table. And the way that we're going to do that is we will get rid of the tables command here because we don't want to enumerate tables. We want to look at a specific table. So we're going to specify a table with capital T and say users table and say dump, which just means show me the information. And you can see here that the information in the table is IDs, address, contact, username, password, and we have some information here, including a username and a password. So from here, we can take this information and do, well, you've probably guessed it, log into the preprod-payroll.trick.htb website. So let's go ahead and do that. And here we are logged in. Now, this part was pretty tricky for me, and I really spun my wheels for, I think, the most part of a week, just kind of taking a peek every day after work and in the mornings and just trying to figure out what do I do. And to be honest, I ended up going through a lot on this website, using Burp Suite, playing around with a lot, and I didn't find anything initially. However, I am really curious if you actually found any way to inject code or perform an RCE or cross-site scripting or anything at all, comment down below. However, the way I did this was I eventually just noticed on the forum that there's a suggestion of fuzzing the URL for a subdomain, which was not something that I had at all expected. So let's go ahead and do that. So the command I used here was wfuzz, which is a fuzzing tool. And then I did tac-c, which I believe was to add colors, and -w for the word list, which in this case, I used the Spiderfoot subdomain 10,000.txt, called our URL or our IP address in this case, then tac-h for host, and I put our host in here. And I initially tried using the fuzz where the preprod was, but it wasn't until I fuzzed the second portion, the word payroll, where I actually found some results. So we'll go ahead and run this, and we'll see here quite quickly that if we look at the lengths of the characters, we will see right there 178 on the word marketing. So this returned a different response than everything else. So what we do from here is we cancel wfuzz and we just browse over to there and see what we have. So we'll just change the word payroll here and add the word marketing. So it doesn't seem to work, but silly me, we have to add it, of course, to our Etsy hosts file, or we can't resolve that name. So let's do that. You can now see that we have a total of 4 names added to our Etsy host file, which I thought was kind of odd for an easy rated machine. It definitely took me a little longer than most easy machines as a result, but that's fine. You know, it's always good to do enumeration and to learn more. So now we can resolve the web page here, where we get this web page with a bunch of stuff going on. Well, after looking around for a while, I didn't see a whole lot. Again, I tried directory busting. I tried more subdomain enumeration. I tried using Burp Suite, looking for anything on the web page. But where I found the clue was simply by, believe it or not, viewing the source code. And it didn't stand out to me right away. It wasn't, I think, until I had been over it several times that it stood out to me. We are using page queries here from index.php. And what came to my mind was, oh, directory traversal. And directory traversal, especially within Hack the Box, can often be the entry point to code execution, because you would maybe find a file upload some code, and then use directory traversal to call and execute the code by browsing that to that page. However, in this case, we are actually going to attempt directory traversal, but we're going to be unsuccessful and then jump over to payload all the things, where we find a directory traversal command intended to bypass a firewall. So a web application firewall. So let's go ahead and try that. I'll just show you here. So if we click, say, I don't think it really matters which one of these, for example, I think we can just take anyone. So we'll just do index, page, doesn't matter. We'll go services. And I guess we want to get off the, we'll just call the query here. So index.php. I guess we need to find the services page. Here we go. So we click services. You can see it does the call here, and we'll say the page equals, we'll go all the way back in our directory traversal, because we know it's a Linux machine on the back end, not a Windows machine. And we'll do Etsy password. We have no luck. There's nothing here. But what's interesting is we didn't get a 404, which kind of made me feel like perhaps there's a little something more here. So if we jump over to payload all the things and go payload all the things, there's actually a fantastic section here on directory traversal. So we'll scroll down to directory traversal. and we'll see bypass. Yes, so we want to try bypass techniques. So there's all these URL encoding ones, but the first one I went to was this. And it reads here that sometimes you encounter a web application firewall which removes the // characters from the strings. So duplicate them, because what's happening then is it's looking for this specific pattern, // So it sees it here and it strips this out, but then the dot before and the // after become concatenated. And we therefore have this request sent to the backend, relayed by the web application firewall itself. So let's go ahead and try this. So we'll just copy this. We'll pop it in here several times. And I think we should see some success. And here it is. We have Etsy password outputted. Now, this is a little hard to read. So an easier way to read this could just be to curl this, because we want to find, hey, what users are on the box? And the obvious thing is just to shoot for hopefully an SSH key within that user, or maybe some password files or some emails on their account or whatever we can find, right? So let's go ahead and curl this, because I don't want to look for all that weird jumbled text. And we'll curl this. Okay, perfect. So we can see already we have Michael down at the bottom. We have our MySQL user, and there's nothing else on here that really stands out. So we're going to go after Michael and do some enumerating to see what exactly we can find on user Michael. And after looking around, you'll eventually realize or learn that he does in fact have an SSH key. So we'll just go ahead and take a look at that right now by going home, Michael. And if you just do this, you won't get any results. So you actually have to be very specific in what you're looking for. We get our SSH key, but again, this format looks impossible to read. So what we'll do is we'll just give it a quick curl, and then we'll be able to read it. And we'll say curl Michael's SSH key. And there we go. We have his SSH key. So let's go ahead and save this. We'll copy this and we will go nano ID _ RSA, as this is of course his private key, and we'll paste that in here. And there's no weird white spaces or this or that. So we're good. So with that being said, let's go ahead now and try connecting into our machine. So we will do SSH-I for the ID RSA key. However, I just recalled we need to set permissions. So let's go change permissions 600. So this means that the user will have full permissions, but group and owner will not. There we go. And we will do, we don't even need to sudo, we can just go SSH tac I for our ID key, ID RSA, Michael at 10.129.144.30. And we'll say yes to continue connecting. And there we go. We are in as user Michael, and we can go ahead and get the user flag. From here, we're going to go ahead and jump into the root phase, which was, I found, pretty difficult. And what it is there is actually a fail to ban service running on the computer. And what happens is you really have to investigate it and learn how it works. And what it looks like is with fail to ban, if you make too many connection attempts, you get blocked, and there are specific actions that are taken. Well, those specific actions that are taken are in a particular file, and that file we were able to kind of manipulate and put some code in there. So by failing to log in too many times, we were able to execute malicious code. So let me demonstrate here. We're going to start off, we could use linps, which I did, but we'll just quickly do a sudo list permission check. And you can see right here that we have this user Michael may run fail to ban restart, which is obviously very interesting. And we want to research that. And when we do, we really learn about how this works, how fail to ban works. I'd never used it before, but let's go ahead and just jump over to the folder there and just look at the directory and some of the other files. So in here, we have all these files. And if we list our permissions, you will see that we have permissions on action D, fail to ban, filter, so on and so forth. However, what kind of stands out here is look at the action D. It says the group members of the security group actually have read, write, and execute. Well, are we a member of the security group? Easy, we can just check by typing the word groups. Actually, I think we can just type the word ID. Yeah, and you can see there we're part of the security group right here. We can also type the word groups if we want. It doesn't really matter. You can see Michael security is there. All right, so we're part of the security group. So let's take a look at the action D folder. Well, there's a lot of things going on in here. So how do we know what happens? There's a lot of files. And when I was researching fail to ban, I couldn't figure out for the life of me what in here I needed to focus on. And it wasn't until I kind of took a peek over at the jail config file, which I'll go back a directory. I saw some information about, what happened. So browsing through this, I just noticed that there are, of course, these ban actions. And these ban actions, just like they sound and just like you'll read online if you do your research, it's just specifying, hey, what exactly is going to happen? However, if we keep looking through this, which I did several times, we'll notice there's an interesting point right here where it says IP tables multi-port log. Okay, so there's obviously a log that's making some IP table checks, I guess, maybe, I don't know. But if we go into action D, we do see some like IP tables multi-port information. Here we see this log and this config file, but what I ended up doing was firing up PSPy to monitor what was going on in the system at the time. And I actually saw this being referenced when I failed to connect too many times. So at this point, I really felt like this was something I should focus on because in the jail file, which of course the jail config file specifies, hey, if you've done stuff if you've done something we don't like, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to go into jail in a sense, right? Quote unquote. And what specifically happens is outlined in this file here. And you can see it says down here, action is to ban IP tables and to block your IP in particular. Well, if we take a look at this file, we certainly can't edit this file. We're not going to be able to do anything here, right? Because it's root only, but yet we have permissions to the directory. So what we'll do is we'll fire a PSPy, then we'll create our own IP multitables.config file, and we'll just simply copy it in here, replacing this file. So let's start with the PSPy. So I have a Python simple server running, and now I'm just calling HTTP and my local IP address, port 8000 and PSPy. PSPy 64, that's what we want. And it says permission denied. So let me jump in the temp folder and just try that again. There we go. So it worked. Awesome. So let's go ahead and run PSPy. Permission denied. Of course, let's change the permissions and just do 777, which is not secure, but we're just going to do it anyways. And here we go. So PSPy is running. Now, I just want to display what happens if you actually try logging in too many times, and I want to show that here. So I'm just going to spam failed attempts to get in, and you can see every time I try, it's logged on the left by PSPy, and it'll eventually tell me, hey, take a hike, buddy. You're not allowed in here. So we'll keep doing this, and we're going to get blocked out eventually. All right, and there it is. Finally, here's what happened. So what we see is we immediately see IP tables being called right after the fail to ban server start, and IP tables is called, and we can see that the multi-port, it's calling a multi-port again. And we saw that earlier. And if we scroll down here, we can see it's doing some inputs, it's doing some writing here, and then it's rejecting our IP. It's saying, hey, IP tables, and it's calling. This is the specific command line we actually saw in that IP multi-port configuration. And it's rejecting us. It's saying, hey, get out of here. You failed to log in too many times. You're not welcome. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to change what happens when we fail too many times to log in, and then restart the service with sudo. Because if we don't restart the service, it's going to keep performing the same instructions that were loaded in memory when the service officially started in that configuration file. So let's go ahead and do that together here. What we'll do is we will close the actually, no, we can just leave PSPy open, and we'll kill my Python server and just quickly connect in. And we're going to browse. What we're going to do is we're actually just going to quickly capture the output that we saw of that multi-port configuration script. So we'll just browse to action.d. Oh, we're already in there. So we'll cat IP tables, multi-port configuration. And again, this took me like days and days to figure out, and honestly just really struggled. Some boxes are hit or miss. Sometimes they do really well. Sometimes I'm just off in the weeds and it's a struggle bus. So let's go ahead and copy everything we see here. And what we'll do is we'll just jump over to the temp folder, I suppose, and we will call this, I guess we want to call it the same name. So let's call it IP tables multi-port config. So we'll go nano IP tables dash multiport.config. We'll paste this in here. And this is now going to be our own version where we want to put our malicious code in here. However, so initially I wasn't able to call a reverse shell, and it was indeed a bit of a struggle. So then I started just trying to cat the root file, and the command was executing, but it wasn't doing anything, which really threw me for a loop. So then I went back to try and reverse shells, and it didn't work, and I was really confused, and I was just asking around in the community saying, hey, like, you know, I can see that my commands are executing, but I'm not getting any results. Like nothing's interacting with my server. And then someone just reminded me, well, there's a web application firewall. So it's preventing those commands and that network activity from making it to your machine. So what can you do locally on the machine? So then I started playing around with trying to copy the root file and cat it out and had no luck. And then as I was looking through some guides that someone had just linked in Discord, I totally forgot the part about changing the permissions on bin bash as the root user, because then you can actually port over the root user's bin bash command. So we're going to go ahead and do exactly that down here. So what we'll do is we will just add under action ban. We'll comment this out and we'll just say action ban equals, and it's nothing crazy. We're literally just going to do change mod, change permissions on bin bash. And then I think we have to do it. It's either action unban or action ban that did it for me. I forget. So you know what? We're just going to go ahead and do it on both just to be safe. Because I remember having some difficulty here, and sometimes I thought action ban was executing, but sometimes it was action unban. I don't really remember, so we'll just go ahead and do it on both. So now with this done, what we'll do is we'll save this file, of course, change permissions, give it full permissions with 777. Now we can copy this over to our desired location. Then we quickly have to restart the service. So it loads our new configuration file. So we'll transport this file over to etc, fail to ban, action D, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to replace this? Sure do. Then what we'll do is we'll do sudo tackl. We'll just go sudo tac etc init.d, fail to ban, restart. Did something wrong here. Oh, I didn't call etc, so let's just try that again. Let's just have it error out. So it didn't work, which is fine. What we'll do is I'll just quickly copy I didn't do hang on. Oh. So I'm missing the starting directory / there we go. So now it works. It restarts the fail to ban service. And what we'll do is we'll just simply go ahead and take a look, and we'll say, hey, show me the permissions of bin bash on this machine. And you can see it now says root, but we can't execute it because only root can execute it. So we need the sticky bit, the SUID bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch PSPy, and we're going to fail to log in 84 million times. You can see our restart commands were here, and we'll keep failing to log in. Oh, and we can see here that it says it did a fail to ban action D here. So if we go over here and we say, show me the permissions on our file, it still didn't work. So this was something else. This actually may have reset. Copy root failed to ban. I think this actually reset what we were doing. Let me just take a quick look. So we'll cat etc action or fail to ban, action D, IP multiport. I forget I'm just having a moment. Oh yeah, it's IP tables, multiport, configuration. And we don't see our command there anymore. So what we'll do is we'll quickly move it back there. And I think that's because there's a cron job that is wiping or recopying the service. So it's not persistent because you don't want to ruin the experience for other users. So we'll move our file there. It didn't work because, oh, you know what? We moved it. So I have to copy it. Okay, so let's remake it. All right, so I've recreated the file, and what we'll do is we will call the move command again to move this to our desired location. We'll restart the service, fail to log in, and then we should see the sticky bit assigned to the bash terminal, and we can call it, and we'll have access as root. So let's give it a shot here. So we're gonna move our IP tables config that has that malicious change. Permissions command to etc fail to ban, action D, and it should prompt us to say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Yep. Now we'll go sudo tac L, and I'm just going to copy this command. So we're calling the fail to ban restart from the etc init D folder. There we go. It did indeed do it. So now we'll go over here. We're just going to fail to log in a million times, and we'll just patiently wait for it to kick us out. All right. So it looks like we did get I don't think it worked. I think it actually just re-cleared our file, and we have to do this again, but let's just check. Anyways, bin bash. I'm not sure why it's not working, but no sticky bit. So I can almost guarantee you our config file in fail to ban is not working as we expected. So we'll go IP tables, multiport.config, and we don't see so I'm not sure why. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and try this again. So let's redo it and fail to log in, and it'll eventually happen, I promise. All right, I hope this worked. You can see here it called the root security action Ds. So let's take a quick look and go ls -list bin bash. We don't see our sticky, but all right, I'll keep trying. All right, so I think the issue is actually that I have to change the action. So I think it's just the action unban that works. And I have to actually have the true action ban in place, because then it unbans us shortly after. And I think that's when this is executed, where I think. So we're just going to go ahead and try that because we know action ban worked. We saw it earlier when I failed. So let's go ahead and try this again. All right, so final correction, I'm a fool, and I can already tell you that the issue is I did not properly call the action unban when I had added my command in either action banned or action unban. So silly me, so let's go ahead and just quickly fix that here. So you can see here where it says action ban, it actually needs to say action, unban. So what we'll do is we'll go action unban because this is the function. So silly me. And there we go. This will now work because it actually has the proper function to call. So we'll change just action unban, and we'll do this over, and we should be in the clear. All right, this is what we want. So we can see it has rejected us here by calling the IP tables command. So any moment here, after a certain time has passed, it will actually unban us. And then we should be in the clear. However, my existing connection is not working. And I guess that's because it's banned me, which would, I suppose, make sense. All right, so unfortunately, for some reason, I still can't seem to get in. However, this is the way I did it. I'll post a write-up that I made down below so you can see, but I am just gonna end it here and move on to one of the next machines that I'm very excited to do. So again, happy hack the boxing, and see everyone in the next video.